right, guys. We're going to talk today about kind of the trade-off space of AltVMs, as well as how new innovative restaking protocols play into this. So let's have some fun. Shuyao, why don't we do a quick intro and then we'll jump in.
Hey guys, nice to meet you for the first time. Shuyao, co-founder of MegaETH.
Jason here. Great to meet everyone. Thanks for the invitation. I'm the co-founder for Solayer. We're the restaking network on Solana, and I'll explain why we're building it on Solana and what's the differences over there. Before this, I built MPC Vault, which is one of the largest custodians in the space. Yeah.
I'm Rushi, one of the co-founders of Movement. I was on the EVM panel with Shuyao, and I felt like the weird one, and now she's the weird one on the AltVM panel. So now you know how I feel.
Yes.
All right, well, let's just make it spicy. Rushi, she's building a optimized EVM L2. You are an active proponent of not wanting to build on the EVM. Why is the Move VM superior to the MegaETH version of the VM?
Well, my point was the traditional EVM. So I think Shuyao will agree with me in that the traditional EVM, the original Ethereum virtual machine was broken, right? Use any EVM L2 in production today, it's slow as shit, clunky as shit. Obviously, there's optimized versions of the EVMs. In fact, we have a somewhat of an EVM implementation. So I'm not anti-EVM. I'm anti the legacy EVM, if you will, which is fundamentally slow, sucks, and I think we're all in agreement there.
Okay.
I just took your spicy question, nuked it. Don't cause PUD.
Shuyao has nothing to say either.
Not really.
Yeah, I think there's place for both EVMs and non-EVMs, right? So like you use like Curve, Aave, Uniswap today, they're all in the EVM, but there is a design space for alternative VMs. If you look at websites today, PHP was the kind of the first prominent factor of website building. Then you had JavaScript and you had a bunch of frameworks on that. Today, if you build a website, you can use Ruby, you can use JavaScript, you can use PHP. So it kind of depends on the apps, which I think we're all focused on now.
So I don't want to start a war here. I guess I'm not involved in
Start a war,
shape
please.
or form.
That's why Solana sent a spy, guys.
Shuyao, can we just shut on restaking? Can we shut on restaking and agree there?
So I'm more from the engineering perspective. I'll just show you the engineering.
The classic dev cop out.
No, I literally write code every day. So good to see everyone. Hi. And instead of letters and everything. But now with Cursor, you kind of don't really have to write everything.
So what's your job then?
I'm a head prompt engineering.
Oh, okay.
But I also do security research, so I do look at the code. But I think one thing I want to say, like addressing, build up on your point, is that I think a lot of things to be improved with the EVM ecosystem. And one thing I like to point out is security related, because just we've seen so many hacks in the space, is that there has to be this long-standing approval for protocols to interact with your wallet, including swapped and everything. And that single thing has led to a lot of fund loss in the past, like I don't know how many years. And then millions, if not billions of dollars lost just because of that. And if you think about
more specific, I used to do MetaMask. It's not a wallet fault sometimes. Just people, gave their seed phrase away and got fished.
Yeah, I think like if you think about from the seed phrase perspective, the same vulnerability apply to all chains, regardless of which chain you're on. But the mechanism to which with which the apps interact with the user, especially outstanding approvals and long-standing approvals, is the issue I think needs to be fixed. Because when you have such a fat tail of security risk introduced by that, you're not going to get mainstream adoption. Because when you speak to people, people only know the hacks, because that made the headlines, right? No matter how much progress and innovation you have in the space, if security is not taken care of, nobody's going to use that system. So sort of that's one thing I want to make. But of course, there are performance reasons. There's like developer arguments, but I'll leave it to the rest of the talk.
I think like I was an EVM developer. I actually was writing Solidity code, and I was really bad. I still am a bad Solidity developer, right? So like I think my stance is like if you are Solidity is good to write if you are a really good developer, like a 10x developer, you'll probably write phenomenal code. But if you're like a dumb college kid that just picked up Solidity, you will write bad code. You will have integer overflows. You will have ransom attacks. You can't afford 200K auditor. And even if you can, like I think it's 90% of all EVM protocols are at risk of being hacked. We saw the Curve, we saw the DAO, we saw the Kyber. Like even most blue chip apps, like Kyber was a 0.0001% probability to get hacked. It was one line that went one integer over and it lost $50 million. And Kyber is like one of the most blue chip DeFi apps, right? So my general thesis is like we're working, like you touched on, a lot security focus. So form verification is really important to us. How do you help the idiot developer that doesn't have a PhD to go to market quickly, right? The biggest issue right now for EVM development is like, yes, dev tooling is there, but it's still very, very difficult to write quality code. That's why we see so many hacks, scams, rugs, etc. So our job is to bring form verification at runtime and provide execution. We're seeing that in move chains today. I think the argument 2 years ago was like, okay, there's no TVL on move, so how are you gonna hack it? Today there's around 2 billion on TVL and it's never been hacked. So I think it's a testament to the work they've been doing.
Yeah, I think along that point, if I may, just a quick point to add is that when you have different language design, it kind of forces developers to think about writing programs from a different perspective. And,
I love you.
Yeah, I will.
I might marry you now.
Can I get a visa or something?
Actually, I know a church.
Okay.
We had our event last night. Crazy Rich Asian. Actually, it fits you guys.
Yeah, take that off. But well, so many cameras. Sorry, didn't see it.
You better not have a girlfriend.
But so where was I? Yes. So let's say for Solana, the structure of the program is actually very different. For developers, you have to think about the accounts they're going to use and declare the accounts they're going to access, which are what we call states upfront. And you think about who can access those states. Right. So, and then if you think about in that paradigm, it's a bit harder and anti-intuitive because you're not like telling a story, writing down your thoughts as much as you do when you write Ethereum programs. That forces you to think about things clearly because you're thinking about it from another paradigm, from another perspective. So I think in terms of making things more secure, that's another way of doing it by engineering the programming languages to do things for you. And that has a lot of similarities with how Rust has been designed to handle, concurrency, safety, with minimal memory sort of leakage, by forcing the developers to think about passing objects and ownership of objects in a different way to handle concurrency than these other languages where you can do it freestyle, but you just have to do it right. But there are so many ways to get it right. When you have a big team writing code, it's very hard to force people to do it the same way. So I think forcing function is being applied at different junctures, and that has the ultimate effect of making it safer as well.
But the SVM concurrency is kind of difficult to work with, obviously, right? Managing state, like that's why block STM and optimistic parallelization is 10x much easier. I think MegaETH also uses block STM, right?
We don't.
Oh, okay, sorry. Then we use optimistic parallelization, which is block STM. So when you're Solana dev, you have to manage state and manage concurrency. Very difficult to do so. Trust me, I've tried writing Orbook on it. It takes forever. But if you have block SCM-based languages, I think Monet is using and the move chains use it, you have optimistic parallelization. So whenever you have conflicts, the parallelization engine manually handles that. So you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I like how my buddy here is making a point the way that he's doing it. So one thing
Two devs
here,
yapping.
Yeah, so one thing here I want to say, because your point being SVM being a little bit more difficult to program, and I would acknowledge that. First is because of Rust. Second is because Anchor framework being a little bit difficult to work with. So I think that's sort of the downside when it comes to devs. But at the end of the day, I think developers are building for end consumers. And from the end consumer perspective, they want fast, they want cheaper settlement. And I think SVM is able to achieve that. And one of the difficult thing about it is having developer declare accounts and states they have to access upfront when they write programs, which is what I call counterintuitive. But the benefit of that is that you get massive, scheduling upside. So that's why Solana is able to process a large number of transactions, because there are like two ways to do concurrency control. To his point, one is optimistic, one is pessimistic. And SVM has chosen the pessimistic route, which means that developers are forced to. I'll come to that in a bit, but I think
SVM versus MoveVM debate. Welcome on the fireside chat.
But I think there is a lot of benefit to be pessimistic, not in life, but in how you handle concurrency.
What about
I guess in
relationships?
life too. So the benefit is that actually a lot of high throughput systems are written as a single thread system. For example, like Redis, right? That's one of the most widely used applications, middleware applications that developers use. The benefit over there is that you avoid context switching, which costs a lot of CPU cycles. You also avoid, locking. So, which is if you do optimistic concurrency control, theoretically, they don't conflict. But in actuality, when you look at the use cases, they go by power law. So 80% of the use cases are probably hitting 20% of the count. And when you have that, scheduling becomes very difficult. So theoretically, if you look at the research papers, I think block STM, which is adopting the optimistic concurrency control, can perform better under a certain workload. But when you move it to pessimistic, but when you have actual workload testing against it, the results are, I would say, ambivalent, I wouldn't, not conclusive, right? So that's sort of something I want to mention over there too.
There's been talk about, this is going to be less technical questions, so I hope that you guys are able to kind of shift gears a bit. People are saying that there's certain parts of blockchains that are more easily commoditizable than others. And I think like there's a big meme about like DA being commoditizable. Is it fair to also to kind of flip that and say, rather than kind of DA being a commodity, that actually execution of different execution layers are commoditizable in a similar analogy to like programming languages, how there's kind of 6 or 7 or 8 big programming languages that the majority of the world uses today. Do you think that we'll see something similar happen in terms of differentiation of alternative VM structures?
Okay, mini Nick White. So I think for my response to that is, if, for example, for us, if we convert a Move developer, they're pretty much stuck to us, right? No matter what happens, you're mine. Like what, you're gonna build an app to us? So I think.
Oh my god!
That's what it is. And for Solana, I think it's a little bit better because you have multiple SVMs, so maybe it's more of a commodity there. And then EVM, obviously, I think it's like there's a lot of EVMs, and like I think Shuyao will say like they can only build use cases on MegaETH, but like if you're arbitral optimism, yeah, execution is probably a commodity, because if I'm building Uniswap, I can fork it 8 different times in the span of 3 days, right? So I think it depends on what execution environment. I would say the traditional EVM execution environment is a commodity per se, because it's not providing anything to end user. There's no developer language change. There's no like even performance enhancements. It's just a copy paste OP stack rollup, which has its time and place. But like when you're an app builder, you're just essentially on a grant hop, which is what we're seeing today with most EVM L2s.
You want to go first? Or okay.
Moderator.
Okay, so to the question, if the question is more around data availability layer,
I think DA
being,
is commodity.
Yeah,
but
DA being commodity. I think depends on how you define commodity, right? Can DA be a standalone solution that could be leveraged upon by other people who are building layer 2s or even layer 1s to some extent? I think the answer is yes. But the second question about whether there's a good pricing structure to properly price DA to make sure that DA survives in the longer term, because there are 2 tokens at play here, right? What if the main token goes down and then we're still paying the fees and etc.? Who pays the fees? I think the economics part of it is very difficult to figure out. So I don't know if any of the DA solution is making money, but you can argue that L1s are making money.
Don't tell them that.
Okay. So I think like pricing is probably what the market needs to look at from a sustainability perspective. How are people sufficiently incentivized? And not just DA, right? Because DA has the storage portion of it, also has the sampling proof portion of it. Even if you look at storage solution, there's a problem over there when it comes to pricing. When you take out the hype factor of the token, what are storage providers incentivized to do in the longer term against these other alternatives that they can do in data centers is the question. Because by default, anything decentralized is going to be less efficient, more costly. You will have to not trust any single individual player, like Amazon Cloud, availability region number 1. I can trust it with 80% and 90% if, confidence level. And if I go to 2 regions, it's like 100% confidence level or something like that. But you can't get that with the decentralized providers. So I think pricing between the different chains are the critical question over there.
Kind of coming to some of the restaking part of this panel, I think we've talked a lot about on the VM side. Jason, I'm curious kind of how you're thinking about the expansion of using different assets in restaking. I think right now it's like we're kind of starting with some of the stronger assets, but this trend is happening where we're trying to restake anything, which I think is somewhat dangerous, but also like pretty cool at the same time. So like, what's the vibes there?
Yeah, I can sort of shed more light or our insights on that. I think restaking with more token variety is definitely going to be the norm. The reason is because if you think about who the end customers
G-move.
are for restaking, it's people who are building off-chain ecosystems that want to secure their own network. And our job is to help them build that in an easier way. So by default, they want to use their own token. And if their own token is not sort of has that much of a TVL, they might want to use So even for go-to-market purposes from the very start. And now the reason why most of the restaking networks not started with the long tail tokens is because you can't really build the go-to-market strategy with long tail tokens. And therefore, you want to look at the major pairs and you want to build something. I think Eigen has EigenDA, which is sort of in active experimentation. I really admire and respect the work that they put out for EigenDA, all the DAS things that they've been working on. But at the end of the day, it's about supporting their token. No question asked over there. It's about how can we be the middleware for the application developers. And at the end of the day, I don't think restaking networks are going to be directly consumer facing. It's only a transition. We're in this transition and then this bootstrapping period. But at the end of the day, it's about servicing other customers.
I think I completely disagree. I think every time I talk to a Solana person, they never said like I need more economic security or I need restaked assets. I think even Kyle tweeted this from Multicoin. Is like I've never met anyone who pitched me that said I need more restaking. But I think like in the ETH and BTC ecosystem, if it makes general sense because these asset classes that have relatively stable price actions compared to altcoins. So if you're restaking those asset classes, you don't have risk of like security loss, right? But with asset classes beyond ETH and BTC, like if you're restaking Cardano, like probably not the best economic security, right? Or if you're restaking like other assets, I don't see like it causes economic issues if the price nukes 20% tomorrow, and then B like I think ETH and BTC, once you have that, that's already enough economic security. Name one use case that needs ETH and BTC, like ETH needs security more than ETH and BTC security.
So I think because you cited Kyle,
Yeah.
the founder from Multicoin, I think he has updated his belief. So you may want to check Twitter recently.
New Series A.
So I don't want to speak anything on the financial side, but because I'm not really good at it, I'm just like I think I can write code better, but I don't.
Don't listen to Rushi, man. Just do your thing.
Yeah.
So I'm here for the alpha. Can you say more?
Can I get allocation now?
Guys.
Yeah. So, but I think Solana. I can speak on this, right? If restaking is a thing, I think there is a question about whether restaking is going to be a thing. So that's a separate argument, right? Assuming that restaking is going to be a thing, I think it's going to be big on Solana. And here's my reason, right? First of all, application builders are chain agnostic and restaking platform agnostic, right? So even if you're building AVSs on Ethereum, you're building something related to Ethereum, you can still use Solayer to do the restaking, to do the infrastructure provision and everything. The second thing is that developers always have to pay in some sort when they use a restaking platform. They also have to wait for at least as long as the block time is or confirmation of the block time is in order to confirm whatever user action that's happening on their platform. When you look at from application builder perspective, they don't want to pay. They want something that's fast because that's the need of the user, right? And because restaking, the need for restaking is chain agnostic, I want to build on a chain that's fast and performant. I don't want to build on a chain that costs $5 at its peak and then $12 if you want to move something larger. It's hard to amortize the cost. And so because I think the next generation of applications are going to be built for the masses, right? If you think about IoT, there's so many GPU providers, how to do proof of stake for each and every GPU to some extent, just to make sure that they act in honest way. And you have to sort of put in that high performance, the scalability there. So we're not doing that. I'm not taking credit for that. It's because of Solana's underlying chain performance and capabilities that allows us to do it.
So can you name one use case that's not solved by ETH and BTC restaking that you guys can solve for? This is an honest question. I'm not trying to be annoying.
I know. So that's actually my argument, right? Building on Solana, you can choose anything, but at the end of the day, it's the cost and the scalability that the underlying restaking platform is able to provide. And with Solana, it's just much more scalable. As an application developer, you can go to EigenLayer for sure, and you pay $5 per transaction. Are you going to pay it on behalf of your user? Or are you going to come to Sol and even subsidize 0.000 something per transaction? You have choices. Just like if Amazon inflates its price by 10x, it's still a cloud service. It still solves issues, but I'm going to go to Google, right? So it's like, it's a competitive marketplace, and the characteristics are defined by the underlying chain itself, as opposed to where you're building it on. And then FYI, I think, Babylon is taking a slightly different approach by being the liquidity layer. That's what they're focusing on. I think they're anticipating more orchestration layer things. I think it's like a different ecosystem structure over there as opposed to Eigen. And then on Solayer, I think we have 4 AVSs live already and 5, including all layer, including all layer. So there's a lot of collaborations. I just want to highlight the speed at which we're moving, which are enabled partially by the underlying chain and the ecosystem.
So you're not really worried about volatile Solana price action with regards to your network?
Do I worry about it?
Solana to moon that.
Do I worry? I think application developers will worry about that. But that doesn't matter because price will always stabilize. And you also mentioned that they will use their own token.
You just said price will stabilize.
No, I think price will
I
stabilize.
wish it stabilized. I wish it stabilized.
Not
stabilized.
Sorry, volatility will decrease, right? In the longer term, the price discovery at this moment, post FTX and post FTX crash, there's a new consensus on Solana pricing. If I were to put it that way, at least from the market perspective. And and also application developers can put their own token in, right? So you're looking at 2 assets backing your system as opposed to 1 asset. And as long as they are not super tightly, perfectly correlated, you always gain something. Just like the portfolio maximization theory that people have taken in college, at least I did. When you have multiple asset classes, you can always maximize return with a smaller variance. And the same thing there. When you have multiple assets, that's actually one of the benefit that you get, as long as they're not correlated. They can be partially correlated, so that's fine.
Yeah, Degen Spartan often says to not, diversify in crypto because everything just moves together.
And it's true.
I think that is true. And just my 2 cents on that, right? There's a lot of narrative building in the space. And it's very difficult for you to have a conviction to say that this thing is going to go up, that thing, while everything else is falling. Your natural reaction to that is, I'm going to sell. So, and there are also market makers that have noticed this trend. So they will sell other assets before you do. And they're selling across the board when BTC goes down.
Dumping on me.
So more like statistical arbitrage, and there's a trend to do that. You can make a profit if you front run everyone, but by front running, you're selling. By selling, you're making the price go down, and by doing that, other people are also going to sell. Yes. So that's why you see everything. So why not? So don't do the job. Just
that's how the
But I mean, we're kind of just giving you shit right now. But if you don't build this, someone's going to build it. You need to get the infra set up first. At some point, Solana may have an ETF. At some point, the price action is going to be more kind of stable, and hopefully, you don't, take down the entire consensus layer or something.
Don't break Solana again.
Well, I think.
I think YK is going to murder me.
Contrary to popular belief that many of the folks who are not familiar with Solana hold, Solana is actually pretty decentralized when it comes to the number of validators.
She was going to swing.
When it comes to the number of validators, and we're part of a significant part of the Solana ecosystem, but I don't think we're anywhere near to sort of taking down the entire ecosystem at all. No. I think Solana is pretty robust. Yeah.
Well, props to you for being here on Rollup Day. We definitely appreciate it. And Solana has rollups too now, so I think cool things are happening everywhere in crypto. And thanks for the great conversation, guys. Let's give them a round of applause. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.